Hello there.
Welcome back, my friend.
Hello, what have we here?
Jedi, we've been expecting you.
Knew I could count on you.
Hello.
Welcome to the rebellion.
What fun!
Greetings, everyone. Hybrid here, and today we are going to dig into my spoiler review for The Mandalorian and Grogu. It debuted this just recent past Friday. This is going up on the 26th of May, so a Tuesday. So it is about 5 days past. While I may jokingly say that a real fan has seen it by now, I understand that schedules are schedules and how life goes. So if you have not seen the movie yet, you don't want to watch this video too much further because I am going to start spilling the beans on this movie. But if you have not seen the movie yet and would like to hear my opinion, I did do a spoiler-free review that went up on Friday. I will hyperlink it over the video here. So check that out if you would like to hear my just initial response. I mean, it was taken shortly after leaving the theater, so it was very, very high energy, amped, just super excited. And I still am. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's dig on in. So today I went and saw a second screening of the movie so that I can be really thoroughly, refreshed on it. And I am now ready to talk about the story and some of the parts that I really liked and some of the parts that, well, I'd say some of the parts I didn't like, but genuinely there's really not any. There's a point or two where I'm kind of like, really, what's happening there? But generally, I'm extremely satisfied with it. I think I said on the Friday video I'd call it a 10 out of 10 movie, and I still stand by that. It's very, very high for me, and I'm trying to pretend it's not recency bias. That sometimes helps, but I don't think it's relying on recency bias to earn that score. So, if you have been keeping up on the marketing for the movie, we have seen a lot of footage about the Mandalorian taking on the Imperial Remnant snow base with the Imperial Warlord that we're getting the Target exclusive Black Series figure of. And I kind of had a suspicion, like if it's in the trailer, it's probably pretty early on in the movie. And a lot of the stuff from the trailers has been really early on in the movie. Some of the Nal Hutta stuff is from the third act of the film, but it's generally just action shots, him fighting robots, which could happen anywhere in the movie. But, we do get some stuff from the trailers that's later on. But, this movie opens up not being a Star Wars episode number titled movie. You don't get an opening crawl, and I'm okay with that. I like that we do get some text just saying, hey, there are some Imperial warlords out there doing some stuff, and the New Republic is sending a guy out there. I like that. For those that just aren't up to date on the TV show or don't have the ability to do streaming, which is getting to be a poor excuse in this time. When I was a kid, like Netflix wasn't an option because like where we lived, we just didn't have the ability to get great internet. But great internet's getting to be everywhere at this point, so get onto the streaming game. But for those that just haven't been keeping up with the series, they give you a mild refresher. All you need to know is there's this Mandalorian, and he's raising an adopted kid named Grogu, and they're going on missions, and that's it. There's a lot of just really cool cinematography in this first opening scene. The snow base is like less than the first 15 minutes of the movie. It might even be more like 10 minutes. It's just a good opening, high intensity action scene. Really gets you excited, right? There are some really cool shots I really like in the series. The third episode, the Mandalorian turns Grogu over to the Empire as he had been hired to do. Then he changes his mind, and there's a bunch of shots where he's going through the dimly lit Imperial base on Navarro, and it's all black, and then you see like the red flashes as he's shooting. You see some shots like that. They keep Mando, in the shadows for the first couple of moments of his appearance. Stormtroopers are walking down a dark hallway, and then a red flash, and the Stormtroopers on the ground, and Mando's, silhouetted there, but it's a flash, so then he's gone. It's back in the dark. Really, really cool visuals. I really like that. The Ludwig soundtracks are just beautiful. He did amazing, amazing work for this movie. Every scene sounds great. It's very consistent with the with the series, the soundtracks from the series. Same composer, of course. While I do love Jon Favreau as a director, he let Iron Man have two totally different soundtracks, between Iron Man 1 and 2. And even as a kid, I was like, where's that kind of metal song, that theme song, the Driving with the Top Down theme from Iron Man 1? Where's that in Iron Man 2? So there was a little bit of me that's like, are we even going to hear the Mandalorian theme in this movie? I mean, Jon Favreau has made some choices before. And thankfully, as soon as I saw Ludwig was coming back to score this movie, that eased my fears. But I can confirm that the continuity, the compositional continuity has been continued, and that is good. I like it when you hear a recurring theme between media. And yeah, so anyway, Mando's working through this base. The music is great. And this Imperial Remnant guy is, like, getting out of there as soon as Mando's getting in there, right? And you get to the AT-AT chase scene really, really quick. And I really like that, There was, I had some discussions with friends before this, in some group texts, like, gosh, as cool as the AT-RT is, I bet he has it for, like, 10 seconds. And then same when we start seeing him on the stap, like from later on in the movie and some of the trailers, and like Hot Toys has now made a stap for your Mando figure. I'm like, gosh, I bet he only has it for a few seconds. It's going to be a cool scene, but to the point where it's like, do I need to get, a big expensive piece of merch like the Hot Toy, And yeah, Mando, jacks the driver's stap and runs it right down the mountain and throws it under an AT-AT foot. I mean, he has it for like 15 seconds. It's a cool scene, but like, I don't know that I require the Hot Toys one. I wish the Black Series would have made one, but I digress. Similar story with the stap. Also, the stap is like he flies down a hallway and crashes it. Like, it's like, yeah, there's not a lot going on with those. But it is really cool seeing some of those prequel vehicles all the same as a prequel kid. I really do enjoy that. The puppet work for Grogu on this has been phenomenal. He's always good in the show, but you can tell they've evolved that puppet a little bit between the end of season 3 and making the one for the movie. You probably have a higher budget, with a movie. That definitely helps, but he was really doing some cool stuff, especially in this first act. Something that I really love with this movie is Grogu he's been learning things along the way, and you see him become mildly independent in season 3 with like the IG-12 mech armor, but like Mando and Grogu split up on these missions and meet up and victoriously, I mean, Grogu's taking out little mouse droids and stuff, and Mando's taking out stormtroopers, and they're not even in the same room as each other when they're doing it. They're doing the Lord's work, and I really like that. I like that he's been acquiring some skills, and that comes in later on, of course. You get a great cinematic scene, after they handle the remnants and they're going to a Delphi base to report to Colonel Ward, who Sigourney Weaver was excellent as her in this entire movie. Just so many great scenes with Sigourney Weaver. Really, really liked her a lot, actually. I was always just kind of like wondering, like, are we going to get a twist? Is she like actually not a nice person? Are we going to get a, gosh, I'm blanking on her name, the pink dress lady from The Last Jedi. Just are we going to get like another lady that's like, trying to like, swing around a title, and no, she was excellent. She, and I think Sigourney Weaver, doesn't pick bad roles to begin with. So she was great, but you see this excellent cinematographical, shot, all the X-Wings, doing all this like flight choreography, landing on a Delphi base, Mando and Zeb walking around. And you actually get, I think it's the only time in any Star Wars movie where you actually get that, beginning of the movie, like all of the actor names over the footage. You see Pedro's name as the X-Wings are flying in. Brendan Wayne gets credit. Jeremy Allen White, Lateef Crowder, Steve Bloom gets like opening titles credit in a Star Wars movie. I mean, great. Never had opening titles like opening credit titles, on a Star Wars movie. Colonel Ward at this point gives, Mando his new Razor Crest and gives him a mission. And, that's where we get into the Rada the Hutt storyline, who Jeremy Allen White did great. However, I've seen some people say, and I do kind of agree, his voice is so modulated as Rada the Hutt that it almost could have been anyone doing it, but it is cool getting a big name like him tied into Star Wars. He's definitely a guy that I've started to see pop up in a lot of things the last couple of years, and I really like him in everything I've seen him in. I like Shameless, I like The Bear, so he's a great actor, and, I'm totally down, for him to have a role in Star Wars. I don't mind having, big names in Star Wars. But yeah, Rada grew up. Rada grew up for sure, and he's gotten entangled in a fighting ring, which is being led by the guy that Mando's looking for, but he doesn't realize it's the same guy. So that was kind of cool. This Imperial officer Coin or Moff Coin, or I'm blanking on his name, but the guy's name is Coin. Actor's name is Johnny Coin, by the way. So they took his last name, like real last name, which is cool. And he's been running a fighting ring, and it's really cool. Rada the Hutt has been working his way through there, but, he's about to make a big spectacle and put him through a fight that Rada's not going to win, so Mando's got to get him out of there. There were some really cool themes there with a lot of the creatures in the pit, and the pit itself looking like a Dejeric ring, like or not Dejeric, that's a board game. Gosh, what's the game? The Hollow Chess, like on the Millennium Falcon, and then all the hologram creatures, those creatures are real, and they're in the ring, fighting Mando and Rada as they're trying to get out of there. That was a great scene. Zeb is used beautifully in this movie. He's definitely just kind of flying the ship and picking them up, but he has some great lines. Really, really loved hearing Steve Bloom back as Zeb again. Zeb's one of those characters, back when Rebels came out, episode 1, didn't really like him. Took me a few episodes to warm up on him, and now I love it whenever this guy appears. Just so much fun. I've had a lot of fun with this movie, and Zeb is definitely just one of those great things. It's nice to get something continuing on from Rebels. Rebels, up until very recently, has kind of been forgotten about a little bit, and now we're finally, like with the Ahsoka series and Mando season 3, they're finally starting to be like, oh yeah, there is a show set in this time. But I love it. Zeb was great in this. He and Rada, were great companion characters for Mando for the majority of, like, the second act, and it was just a really, really fun bit. Something I really liked seeing in this movie, too, during this Road to the Hutt in the pits section is, so this Janu Coin, this warlord Janu Coin, he had this officer guy, Hog's Breath, and he's an Itoshi, who, that's Jedi Master Stacy Tin's species. I really like it when we start to see some of those, like, prequel aliens, come back. The Mandalorian has always been really good about reusing some of the, the original trilogy alien species, but it's just really cool seeing some of the prequel ones pop up as well. Same as, well, not a species, there's this whole group of battle droids that have been reprogrammed, but they're not like B1 or B2, they have B1 and B2 inspiration, but they've got like new limbs and stuff, so they're like an evolution or maybe a bastardization of different droids having been put together to, repurpose them into something new, perhaps. But again, I just really love seeing like prequel assets appear, original trilogy assets appear a lot. So, getting something like an Itoshi species, member is really cool. But from there, they've picked up Rada the Hutt, who, and I totally skipped over this part because it was not blink and you miss it, but it was brief. Mando was sent to now Hutta to talk to the twins, who were like, go get Rada and bring him back. He's been kidnapped, and then we'll tell you where to go get this Imperial. Well, Rada the Hutt is there on his own free will, and he's like, I know this Imperial, it's Janu Coin. Go capture my pit boss, And so anyway, he helps them track them down, and Coin gets turned over to the New Republic, and Rada's let go because the Hutts ultimately want Rada killed. That way they can then take inheritance to Jabba's fortune, and Rada has no interest in that. He actually has a compelling storyline of, my dad's Jabba the Hutt. Everyone thinks I'm terrible because of that. I want to be my own man. I have no interest in crime. I just want to live a life, And honestly, I mean, like, kudos, Rada grew up with us. He's a real one. But so anyway, there's this pause in the movie, right, where it feels like, gosh, if it was like the show, like, gosh, like we'd be at the end of an episode, right? Some people I've heard say, gosh, this feels like the Clone Wars movie. It's like 4 episodes of The Mandalorian clipped together. And I don't feel that. I don't think it's that cut and dry, but like it definitely has some elements of the show to it. But there's, after this, it feels like the mission's over. Mando goes back to Navarro. And he goes to his house, and something I'd been wondering is, where's the N1? He has the Razor Crest back. The N1's just parked at his house. He's just not using it during this movie. And, like, I don't know, it was cool to see it. That was cool. But, Mando's at his house. He's got a new Razor Crest, and it's all stock. So he calls the Anzellans out, and the Anzellans are excellent. I saw something get posted that Dave Filoni was in charge of, like, the puppeteering department for this movie, so all the Grogu and Anzellan stuff was very, very much involved by him, and I respect that. This era of modern movies relying heavily on CG, I don't hate CG, and then you have people that are panicking, gosh, is it CG or was it AI? I don't care about that. That's not an argument I want to get into. But this movie actually uses a lot of older technologies that have been modernized. It feels very Lucasfilm. It feels very George Lucas in the 80s. There's a lot of puppeteering. There's a lot of animatronics, and then they're slightly enhanced with some CG. But, like, the Anzellans walking around, they're hopping 1 foot from another. These puppets don't have great knees, and it's adorable. It's bad, but it's cute, and I love it. And but these Anzellans are great. But this is finally where we start seeing, again, everyone's thinking he's gonna be the big bad in the movie. Embo shows up, and Embo looks great. It basically looks like they just took his Clone Wars costume and just made it live action, and I don't despise that. I'm gonna share a hot take. I'm not like, I don't think Embo's like all that cool. I know some just clicked away, right? Like, Embo was in like 2 episodes of the Clone Wars, and he has a hat, shield, and a dog, and he just does flips and stuff, and so, but Embo's role in this movie, it feels like his role is to make all the Clone Wars kids go, oh, it's Embo! And he did a great job at that, But the role also could have been done by, like, any bounty hunter, It could have been anyone. And, but I'm not mad about it, As a Clone Wars kid, I'm happy to see Clone Wars characters pop up. I just remember, like, as a kid, like, I could have bought an Embo action figure. He was on the pegs, same as so many other characters. But the thought of buying Embo never crossed my mind, So it's like, I'm just sitting here like, oh, okay, fine, So I know some of y'all are sitting there like, the Embo slander will not be tolerated. It's not slander. I'm just like, he's just not that cool. I don't know. But there's a hot take for you. But he did have a cool sequence here. There was actually a really cool shot I liked where it's from Embo's perspective, where he's like climbing onto Mando's house's roof. So it's like a first-person perspective, and that was really cool. But anyway, he catches Mando because the Hutts want him, because he was supposed to bring Rada to them, but he'd sent Rada away on another ship because he got the Imperial he needed. He didn't care about fulfilling, a contract to the Hutts because he wasn't that excited to work for the Hutts in the first place. So he gets taken back to Nal Hutta, and that's where you see a lot of the scenes in the trailer. His helmet gets taken off, which, against the rules. Although they've changed the rules, I guess now he doesn't have to go take a bath in the mystic waters again. Now he just gets to, as long as I kill the person that takes my helmet off, and fine, fine. I'm not, like, harping on that too hard. But, yeah, it just, he gets taken back to Nal Hutta, and one of the Anzellans got taken with him. Oh, the poor little guy. Embo's dog grabbed him. I remember laughing. I remember laughing so much in that theater. The dog grabbed the Anzellan, and I love the Anzellans, but the Anzellan's in the dog's mouth, and he says to the other Anzellans, "He got me!" And it's just the delivery of the line. I love it. But anyway, so Mando is, being, taken to the huts. The Anzellan ends up getting away into the swamps, and they have Mando dropped into a pit, where instead of it being a Rancor pit, he's fighting these, like, Amani aliens, which wasn't there one on Jabba's sail barge? That's an original trilogy alien. And he ends up fighting a serpent dragon, which we actually see Obi-Wan fight one on Nal Hutta in the Clone Wars in the Quinlan Vos episode of Season 3. That was a cool callback. But, this is one of those great bits. This is like a great plot point where, again, Mando's been taking Grogu on all these adventures. Grogu's been soaking all this in. He's been Mando's apprentice now for a bit. And, gosh, you see Grogu, his dad just got taken. He's going to go get his dad back. You see him gear up. There's a line earlier in the movie where they're about to go into a mission, and he's like, remember, wear your armor, snug up the straps. Not so much that you can't move, but enough that it's secure. And you see Grogu doing that for himself. He's gearing up. He's grabbing some gear. He grabs one of Mando's grenades off the shelf, and he and the Anzellans take off. And, just great bit. Really liked that. And, Mando's in the pit, and the Anzellans and Grogu break him out, and they take him to the Anzellan ship, which I feel slightly slighted because of all the merchandise we had for the Anzellan ship, because the movie shoots it where the ship is far away from the Anzellans every time that we see them, like, walking up to it and getting out of it. It looks like a normal-sized ship, but we see all these toys of this tiny ship, with, the Grogu and the Anzellans next to it, and so it's like a funny bit in the movie where they're getting away from the base. They've gotten Din out of the snake pit, and they're like, "We got a ship. Let's go to the ship." And they get to the ship, and the ship is like waist high on Mando. He cannot fit in the ship, so he sends everyone away because he'd been bit by the dragon snake, and it has a venom, and he wasn't going to make it anyway. So it's that was a really funny bit, but the way they'd shot it up until they never showed you how truly small the ship was until then. So there's a part of me that's like, gosh, I wish we didn't have a Lego set and a Actionverse toy, showing this, little smaller scaled ship, which also I really actually like the idea of there being different scales of ships. Because there's so many species that are little, and there's so many species that are big, like the Hutts, and it's like, gosh, not everyone flies around in a Millennium Falcon or a Razor Crest, some fit. There's a line there when they're capturing Janu, and Rada and Grogu are on the ship, and Mando's like, hey, why don't you guys warm the engines? And Rada's like, I don't fit in the cockpit. Yeah, some species just can't, so that was a really cool plot device there. But, it was really cool. I really liked that whole segment with the Anzellans and their ship. It was just really fun. I really love the following sequence we get where Grogu, again, is using these skills that he's acquired throughout the series. He's able to heal Din's snake bite, but not the venom, which actually throws me, because when you go back to that scene from Season 1 where we learn that Grogu has the ability to heal people, and he heals Greef Karga after he'd been bit by the, the big space bat, that they were talking about the poison that had, and Grogu was able to heal his wound and the poison there, whether the dragon snake venom is a more intense type of poison, but he couldn't heal this poison, But Mando's rendered comatose for a time, and so, Grogu has to hide him and care for him and bring him water, and he ends up finding this really cool fisherman guy that lives in a hut in the swamps, and he ends up, getting the point across to him about about needing a medicine for Mando, and so the guy gives him a home remedy, black goop on a leaf kind of thing, and he's like, feed it to him and hope for the best, and it works. And from there, again, like the Grogu's healing is was like one of the two things where I'm like, what happened there? Where it's like, yeah, I guess he can't heal this type of poison. Another thing is the Hutts have captured Rada at this point. They shot down the ship that he was sent away on, and the interesting thing is this ship was a gun smuggler ship, and they weren't going to Nal Hutta, but the ship was shot down on Nal Hutta, and it almost feels like there's a deleted scene in there, right? Because, like, they weren't going to Nal Hutta. Why did they crash on Nal Hutta? did like a bounty hunter board and send them that way and then make it crash? Why did it go to Nal Hutta? But anyway, Mando's inspecting the ship, and he'd been captured. He was disarmed. He was fighting the snake with a spear that he'd found in the pit. And you see him. He has no pistol, no anything. But he walks on the ship, and he's like, and you actually see his pistol in his holster, and he draws it when he walks up the ramp to like start like clearing it out, making sure there's nothing in there. And it's like it felt like a continuity break to me. I was like, where did he get the pistol back? And why did he have to draw it when like this ship is full of guns? It could have just been like he walked up the ramp and there was one on the ground that he picked it up, but that's not what the scene was. I was on my second viewing. I specifically was like, where did that gun come from? Yeah, he had it in his holster, and it's like, gosh, he didn't. He didn't when he was in the huts, and he didn't get his pistol back after leaving the palace. They left the palace in a rush. So that threw me a little bit. People were... And I had some, thoughts myself where going into the movie, watching the trailers, gosh, how'd he get the pulse rifle back? He finds it on the ship, and that fit, because it was, like, on a gun rack, and he's like, oh, I want that, and he takes it off the gun rack. Fine, that fits for me. How to get his jetpack and original pistol back, from having had them taken away at the end of season 3 of the show. It's been a little while, so whether they found their way back into his possession, there is a time jump between season 3 and this. Not a lot, but, it's been more than like a month, it's been a year or two probably. And, so it's like all the stuff that was in the box with the Black Series Deluxe figure, the gladiator sword, he picks that up in the arena and discards it in the arena, and the little short rifle, he uses that, capturing Janu coin, and it gets left on the Razor Crest or something. He doesn't use it again throughout the movie, and that's fine. I don't mind that, but it's just like this weird continuity thing where it's like, the pistol, Embo has his pistol, Embo has his jetpack. He doesn't get the jetpack back by the end of the movie, so does he have to... And Embo had it, so how's he going to get that back this time, because Embo captured him and took his stuff away from him. I just feel like there was like just a little continuity break on the pistol. And he could have walked on the ship and picked up like the same pistol out of a crate, and I'd have been like, okay, yeah, it's the same but a different gun, fine. But it's just the continuity of him carrying it on board instead of finding it on board. I don't know. I'm like the OCD, like the Star Wars guy that's like, wait a second, But, that and the Grogu healing thing are like the only things where I'm like, yeah, there was a break there. But, Mando and Grogu have another one of their discussions from season 3. Gosh, we're not going to get left alone. Do we deal with them or do we run? All right, we're going to deal with them. And we get a great scene with Mando, breaking into the palace, and he's fighting these big mechs. We're getting a Lego set from it, so, we kind of knew about that. But these are all stop motion. Again, in this era of AI and CGI, seeing them use stop motion technology in a modern Star Wars movie, just beautiful. They move just a little bit janky, but they're old droids, so, like, it fits, they're going to be a little bit weird. From there, the movie winds down pretty naturally. They get into the Hutt's throne room, and Rada fights the twins, and Embo and Mando fight, and all the bad guys get knocked into the pit with the snake, and Embo sneaks out a door down there, and the twins are handled, and the New Republic comes in and blows up the palace, and they all escape and go back to Delphi base, and everyone lives happily ever after, right? So I really don't have, like, a lot to say from, like, the mech fight afterwards, just because that was, like, really cool stop motion. And from there, it's pretty, just natural, and it fits good. But here we are, we're kind of at the end of the story. I've kind of done my recap and my commentary and what I've felt, watching it. All in all, again, other than, like, the weird pistol thing and the does it cure poison, does it not cure poison thing with Grogu's healing, I really have nothing really to say on this movie. Nothing bad to say about this movie. I have a lot of good to say. I had a great time, honestly, on both viewings. I think I'm going to end up seeing it at least one more time in theaters. This second viewing of mine was a solo viewing, and I usually like to go see Star Wars stuff with my mom, and she was not available this weekend, so there's going to be a third viewing. and of course, however many home viewings there are after this too. I mean, this movie's gonna get watched a lot, same as the show, and just my genuine feelings on it. I called it 10 out of 10. The night of my first viewing, and that super hyped up, spoiler-free reaction review, and I wanna stand by that. But I'll self-critique to the point where I will say that I'm pretty generous in a lot of my rankings compared to some others. I will confess. I really don't think there's any bad Star Wars movies. I know there's a lot of people that think that all of them after Return of the Jedi are bad, or all of them after the Revenge of the Sith are bad, or however. I don't think there are any bad ones. I have a fun time putting any of them on, but I think truly where this one falls for me, this is a different vibe. So if you're the person that hasn't enjoyed The Mandalorian so far, the series, you're not going to like this movie. But I would hope that you would know that going into this, being, it's another story about the Mandalorian, a character you don't like, and some don't like him, and that's fine. You're allowed to not like him. This definitely has some vibes of the show in a grander, higher budget, very nice looking format. So if you're someone that didn't like the character to begin with, well, what are you even doing in this theater? But this movie kind of feels like a solo Star Wars story situation for me, which also I love that movie. That movie's great. And my stance on that is gosh, some of these Star Wars movies have such high stakes. They're blowing up a Death Star, the Republic's falling, a Sith Lord appears for the first time in a millennia, some really galaxy-shaking things. And then you got these little stories, these guys dealing with the Hutts, Han Solo getting the Millennium Falcon, and it's a different scale, it's a different scope. This movie is something that I feel like I could just put on and have a good time with. Whereas, gosh, if I put on Phantom Menace when the credits are rolling, I kind of feel compelled to put on Attack of the Clones. And when those credits are rolling, gosh, I kind of feel compelled to put on Revenge of the Sith. It always seems to be a bit of an event when one of those Star Wars episode number, titled Star Wars movies gets put on. Whereas The Mandalorian and Grogu, it's just 2 hours of fun, and it was fun. There's some good jokes in it. The jokes don't overwhelm or take away from the story. It's the same energy as the show. So if you like the show, I think you're really going to like the movie. And if you don't like the show, of course you're not going to like this, It's just not for you. But, yeah. I'd also think this would be a great thing to, if you got, a kid in your life that hasn't watched Star Wars yet, this would probably be a good introduction point, Hey, watch Mandalorian and Grogu with me. Oh gosh, you liked that? All right, now let's dive in. Now that you've had this, you've whet your appetite for Star Wars, if you will. And I think there's going to be a lot of kids where this might be their first Star Wars theater experience. It's the first Star Wars movie in theaters in 7 years. That's a whole bunch of kids between then and now that have come along this is going to be their first Star Wars movie. So I really, really hope that if you have a young one in your life, you take them to see it in theaters. I'd like to see this perform well in theaters. And as far as the future, I wouldn't mind if we had some more movies mixed in with the TV format. As much as I like the TV format, and going into this, there was a part of me that's gosh, if they'd have just made this into season 4, I'd have gotten 8 hours of really good Star Wars instead of 2 hours. But this is 2 hours of a better quality format, and that's not to be disregarded as well. So I hope The Mandalorian as a series isn't done, and that we're not just exclusively going with film forward. But I'm also okay with more film stories happening too. So truly, I do think that it's a 10 out of 10 in the end. I had a great time with it, and I highly recommend. So, now that we wind down and we look at my table of merch here, I need to announce a giveaway. I am going to be putting up a separate video for entry on this, but you could potentially win the Burger King Zeb Cup, the Dr. Squatch Mando and Grogu Bars of Soap, the Black Series first edition AT-AT driver, and the Burger King Mandalorian toy. This is just a little bundle of fun stuff all about this movie that has given me so much joy over this last week, and you potentially can win too. One of the most important rules on this is, unfortunately, due to shipping being crazy right now, I'm only shipping in the US. So you are welcome to view the video, but if it's going to be international shipping, I can't swing that right now. But I will pay for shipping anywhere in the US on this. So keep an eye out for that video. Should be up very soon after this, and I will gladly give a couple of little trinkets and fun things from this movie to a happy viewer. So that's all I got to say. Thanks for hanging out. May the Force be with you. And let me know, did you like this deep dive recap review? Should I do this kind of thing more often? A part of me only wants to do it for new media, but maybe I go back and touch some of the older content, maybe I should. Let me know if you had fun with this. I normally don't do stuff this long form, and I'm ready to call it. So may the Force be with you. I'll catch you next time. Until then, have a good day.